So section 1.5 is bias in sampling. What's it mean for something to have a bias to it? Unfair, right? Like you're kind of pulled one way or the other. The very first day when I asked you guys, would it be fair for me to ask you guys who your favorite baseball team is? No. That would have a bias in my sampling technique. So now that we know the different sampling techniques from 1.3 and 1.4, they want you to be aware of what can happen if you sample. What type of biases are there? All right, so there's actually 3 kinds, so I'm going to star those. Sampling bias is a kind of bias. Non-response bias is a type of bias. And response bias is a top. So there's 3 biases that we're going to talk about, okay? So the first definition is just the definition for bias. If the results of the sample are not representative of the population, then the sample has bias. Are you guys representative of the whole population of the US? No, just little central Illinois, right? So that's why we'd have a bias. So what is sampling bias? It is when the technique used to obtain the individuals to be in the sample tends to favor one part of the population over another. So what's one type of sampling bias would be, I'm trying to think, voluntary response. So text or tweet in. What do I mean by that? There's a lot, and does anybody watch reality TV show? Or some of those reality TV watchers? And even if you don't, you know what I'm talking about. American Idol, X Factor, all those different, Dancing with the Stars, all that kind of stuff. Whenever they ask you to text in your vote or tweet in your vote or whatever it may be, that has a bias to it. Why? Because is that person that win really the best, what the U.S. thinks is the best answer? No, because it's all the U.S. watching it. Absolutely not, right? So anytime we have this voluntary, who's usually the one that's going to reply is someone that feels really, really strongly about it one way or the other, right? Another good example of this is you guys that have been here. So a lot of you are brand new. Or even if you haven't been here, we email you at the end of the semester a survey about each of your classes and how the teacher in the class was, okay? Have you guys had to take those before? Like, even in your old classes, they'd give you a survey. So why is there a bias there? Because they're just emailed to you. So do you actually have to do them? No. But guess who's filling them out? The people that really, really hate you, right? Or really, really love you. I don't get the middle-of-the-road students. I have those people like, oh, my God, Molly's the best teacher ever. Or, holy moly, I don't know why she's working here. She sucks, blah, blah, blah. You just get those 2 extremes. You don't really get the true population, okay? So what is a type of sampling bias? So undercoverage falls under sampling bias, okay? It's a type. It's when the proportion of one segment of the population is lower in a sample than it is in the population. So basically, you don't do a good job of covering everyone, okay? Where could this happen? Say you sample through a newspaper. Who of you guys still get and read a newspaper? Right? Like only a few of us. Or online newspapers, right? Who of you know that your parents still get and read the newspaper? Who of you know your grandparents still get and read the newspaper? And so things, your hands go up, up, and up, right? So if I'm only sampling through a newspaper, what type of people am I usually hitting? Older people, right? So am I really having an equal proportion of everyone? No. So I shouldn't sample through the newspaper solely. Maybe I should sample through email or texting or whatever it may be, okay? So undercoverage is a type of sampling bias. It's where we don't get true representation of everyone, all right? Not everyone's covered. Are there any questions on sampling bias? You guys good? All right, let's look at non-response bias. It's exactly what you think. What's it mean for a non-response? Nobody responds, okay? And that's exactly what non-response bias is. It exists when individuals selected to be in the sample do not respond to the survey. And they might have a different opinion from those who do, okay? So again, those email surveys at the end of the semester, are a good example of non-response bias as well. I taught over 100 students last semester. Any guesses on how many people filled out that survey? 6. So do you think those 6 people are a good representation of all the 100 students I had? No. Okay. 20. Man, I would love 20. And 20 is low when you guess 20, isn't it? Yeah. So non-response bias, you did great. You sampled great. You used your systematic sampling. You get it to everyone. People just choose not to fill it out and send it back. Where else do you get this? Anytime you go to a store or a fast food restaurant and they say, okay, go online and take the survey and you get a free Happy Meal or whatever. You guys get that, like Wendy's or Dairy Queen or someone does that? That's another non-response bias. We're not going on there and signing in and doing these surveys, okay? They are telling everyone, so they're doing a great job sampling. The sampling people, the people that are getting sampled, are not doing a good job responding, all right? Last one, response bias. This exists when the answers in our survey do not reflect the true feelings of the respondent. So response bias, you actually sample pretty well, and people actually reply, you get responses, but what is said is not necessarily exactly accurate, either on purpose or maybe not on purpose, okay? What is interview error? It's when you intimidate the interviewer, or intimidating interviewer, or interviewee lies. And I don't know if interviewee is a real word, but it's the person that's being interviewed. Okay, interviewee. My R and V's kind of look alike. All right, so how can you get interview error? So say you're doing a test about drug use in here. And in that corner is a Godfrey police officer watching you. How likely are you going to be on replying to the survey accurately? Right? So again, it's just like you're intimidated. You don't want to answer. Or what if I go around face to face and say, hey, how am I as a teacher? How am I as a teacher? Are you going to say you're horrible to me at my face? No, right? I'm intimidating you because I'm asking you right there, then and there in front of you, okay? So intimidating interviewers can cause inaccurate answers. Also over here, the interviewee, the person that's filling these surveys or whatever, may be lying. And maybe not purposely. How many of you guys, like I have lots of health issues, and I feel like every time I go to the doctor, I have to fill out my whole health history, and I don't remember crap. Like I don't remember how many times I've had surgery or all that stuff. So am I lying on purpose? No, but I just can't remember accurately, and so therefore they're not getting quite accurate answers. All right, misrepresented answers are exactly that, lies, or misrepresented answers, or facts. It kind of goes with the second part of the interviewee. Like you might just blurt out lie, okay? Or maybe the way I asked you, it limits you to choose, and so you're not really answering accurately because you had to choose. Like if I asked you your favorite TV show, but I only gave you 5 options, and you have to pick one of those 5, is that one you pick necessarily your favorite TV show? No, and so it's kind of misrepresented in that case that I should have an open-ended question and you should be able to write in your favorite TV show. Wording of questions. It's not balanced. It's too confusing. Vague, etc. How you ask your questions in these surveys can play a role in what kind of answers you're going to get, okay? So what if I'm just really curious about family and family size, and I just ask you guys, how many siblings do you have? Could you see my error in asking it that way? What's a sibling to you? Right? Brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, step-brother, so if you really want to know, you say, how many true-blooded, you have the same parent siblings do you have? And so unless you're vague, or maybe you're going to feel this way a lot with a lot of questions and stats. You read the question and you're just like, what did it even ask me? I have no clue what that question said. You sometimes get those problems and you're like, I have no idea how to even answer this because I don't even know what it's asking. So then you just make up an answer, right? Is it going to be accurate? Probably not, because you're not even sure what it's asking, okay? Ordering of questions and words. Order can change response. Order can change response. Can I steal your page 38? Because I'm failing miserably at remembering to bring my book. Okay? So, in your book on page 38, they have these two questions that they want to ask people. But how you read them, if you read a certain one first, you might reply really one way, and then so you feel like you have to reply a certain way. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm sorry that I'm stealing this from you, and you can't even look at it, but here it is, okay? So ordering of questions, we're right here in the blue. It says, many surveys will rearrange the order of questions within a questionnaire so that responses are not affected by prior questions. So they're kind of trying to get rid of that bias, guys. Consider an example from Schumann and Presser in which the following two questions were asked, okay? So A, do you think the United States should let communist newspaper reporters from other countries come in here and send back to their papers the news as they see it? So if you read that question first, you're like, no, communists can't come in here and tell their country what we're like. You know, heck no, keep them out. But then you read B, and it says, do you think a communist country such as Russia should let American newspaper reporters come in and send back to America the news as they see it? And you're like, well, crap. I just said they couldn't come here. So should they let us go there? Probably not. But think about it if you got the survey where the order was flip-flopped, okay? If you were reading B first, can America go there? You're like, well, sure, we should be able to go there and report what we see, right? But if you're saying yes to that, what happens when A is second? We're like, crap. If they're going to let us come, we should let them come. And that's kind of what is explained down here. For surveys conducted in 1980 in which the question appeared in the order A and then B, 54.7% of respondents answered yes to A, and 63.7% answered yes to B. If the questions were reordered, the number goes up quite a bit. And again, it's like if we're getting permission to do it, we should let them do it. But if you say no in the first part, you're more likely to say no in the second part. Okay? Thank you for letting me use that. All right. So type of question, open-ended versus closed. Open-ended versus closed. And closed is like multiple choice. Why might we get biased when we have a closed question? It's that example I used earlier. If I'm forcing you to choose one, and it's not necessarily the one you like, I'm not getting accurate results. So if I truly wanted to know your guys' favorite TV shows, I should just say, what's your favorite TV show? Blank. And you should be able to fill in the blank. But if I say, what's your favorite TV show of all time? Friends, Grey's Anatomy, Arrested Development, Cops, and American Idol. How many of you guys like any of those? Right? A couple of us, right? But everybody else is like, crap, I have to pick one from there? You know, you're getting forced, and so you're going to have a bias. I'm like, well, according to my survey, everyone likes Cops, you know. No, it's probably like, well, it's the only one I've seen, you know, so I circle it. So if you want true results, you will have open-ended. If you want easier ways to tally, you'll have closed. Isn't it a lot easier to say, I had 3 A's, 4 B's, you know, versus, oh my God, I have 22 different answers that I have to combine and study. All right, last one, data entry error, again, is exactly what it means. The data was entered incorrectly. Now, I have the skinniest fingers ever, but I call myself fat fingers because I get in a rush. So I will be typing on my keyboard or typing on my calculator, and I just get in a rush, and I hit like 3 buttons at one time, that kind of thing. That happens when some people collect data and try to enter it. And so if we're entering in a 10 instead of a 100, that's going to greatly affect our results, and so we would have a bias there. So again, let's go over the 3 types. Sampling bias, you do a bad job of taking your sampling. Basically, it's almost a convenience sampling, right? You're like, I'm going to sample people this way, but it's kind of voluntary, so I don't necessarily get the most response back. Non-response bias, you do a great job sampling, they just don't reply back. Response bias, you do a great job sampling, and they do a great job of responding, But somewhere in there, there was error to make some bias, okay? All right, so the last two things can get kind of confusing. We have two types of errors that may occur. One is simply because we have a bias happening, okay? We don't have accurate results because some kind of bias from up here happened. The other type of error happens when I ask you guys, and you're just a sample, is it 100% accurate to the rest of Lewis and Clark? No. So there will be a little bit of an error because I simply sampled, all right? So let's look at it. Non-sampling errors are errors that result from undercoverage, non-response bias, response bias, or data entry. It's all this thing up above. It's errors that could be present because how we sampled, okay? How you sampled. And you're like, okay, it's how I sampled, but yet it's called non-sampling errors because conveniently, sampling error is just the error because you're using a sample for a population, okay? You're using a sample to represent a population. It's because it's a sample. Samples are not 100%. All right? So non-sampling errors are all the errors that occur because of the biases, how you sampled. Sampling error is just the fact that a sample is not the population. So you're going to be off by a little bit. Remember, you're never 100% with statistics. So you're going to be a little bit off, and so that's why it's called sampling error. All right, are there any questions on page 9? People still writing that stuff down? You guys doing okay? So that was section 1.5.